Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Johnson with Fusion Alliance, and we're partnering with the CDO magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of CDO interviews. Today, I have the great pleasure to introduce Alex Golbin, who is CDO at Morningstar in New York City. Alex, welcome to the interview.
Mark, thank you very much, and it is my pleasure to be part of this interview. Thank you.
Awesome. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, the role that you are holding there at Morningstar, and tell us a little bit maybe first about Morningstar.
Certainly. So as you said, I am the Chief Data Officer of Morningstar. I've been in this role for exactly 11 months, so I'm still very much a rookie. Morningstar is a data and research company, was founded with the premise of democratizing data and democratizing research for individual investors. So with the mission of empowering investor success, the notion was to make sure that individual investors who need to save for their retirement, who need to get intelligence into their savings, have access to the same information, the same caliber research, and the same kind of data that's usually is the privilege of institutional investors. And as the market becomes more complicated, as there are more and more financial assets and financial instruments, Morningstar value and Morningstar suite of products also grows. So we have software products, we have data and research products, we have rating agency. We're putting a lot of effort into ESG, as sustainability, even in investment, is a very important topic of conversation. So essentially answering the question of what can investors do with their money and how do they comfortably retire with dignity is the purpose that we're trying to pursue.
Awesome. And I know we're in a global pandemic now. You're coming to us from New York. And that challenge, I'm sure, with the volatility that's entered the markets globally has really, just sort of accelerated on steroids. So I'm imagining that your work and the value of the data that your organization provides is pretty significant. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, your background. How did you come to this? What's your circuitous path to sitting in the CDO chair at Morningstar?
It's an excellent question, and I must disclose that I'm really new to the notion of CDO. I've never had this title, and I'd be even more candid to say that I still am trying to figure out what does CDO role really entail. The good part is that since it's a relatively new concept in the market, and it's a relatively new concept for financial services organizations, I believe it becomes what you make of it, and that's what I think made it really attractive for me. I have been working with data essentially for most of my professional career. Although I started as a software developer, I am a computer scientist by education. As you can tell by my accent, I didn't grow up in this country. I got my undergraduate degree in the former Soviet Union, and I got my master's in computer science here in New York. Since about 1994, I was in financial services. I spent about 12 years at Lehman Brothers in fixed income research. I spent almost 15 years at BlackRock running data, analytics, portfolio modeling. So I've always been more of a portfolio and analytics and bond geek, and less so like a data technologist. Always worked with technology, respected technology, but never built technology, excluding my early years as a software developer. But what I believe makes it interesting for me to step into the CDO role is being in the industry for so many years. I've been on the buy side, I've been on the sell side. I've been a happy and respectful client of Morningstar Research for many years. Right. I know what works. Hopefully I know what doesn't work. And I have a pretty good perspective of what people do with this data and research. So essentially being able to eat your own cooking is really important. And that's what I think is valuable. And I hope what's valuable for me to bring to this role of a CDO is create more of an outcome-oriented technology, as opposed to building technology for the sake of technology.
Right. Where do you report in the organization, Alex?
So in the organization, I report into the Chief Technology Officer, who reports into CEO.
Okay, that's great. And so I think it's really fascinating to find people such as yourself in the role. Not fascinating, I guess this is maybe the wrong word, but really illuminating to find people like yourself taking the role of the CDO, because as a consumer of data and as a person who's driven value from the insights that analytics provide over data, you really understand the challenge that organizations have in getting their hands on the right data at the right time with quality and trustability in it. And of course, as the world has rapidly digitized, increasingly there are more sets of data that are important in the analyses that are being mounted. Tell us a little bit about how you bring your unique background and experience on the consumption side to the table of having to really be responsible for driving the curation side.
From my perspective, just understanding the user base is the most important aspect. And what I mean by that is, in order to answer the question, you need to provide an answer. In order to provide answer, you need certain facts. Those facts come from data. And then you project it back into what kind of data do you need in order to create answers, to provide information that satisfy investor needs. As an example, if you're talking to an institutional investor portfolio manager, they're dealing with very large, complex portfolios with lots of trading activity. That's where precision into decimal places, 6 decimal places in their tracking error is critically important.
Right.
So you go after precision, you go after complexity. If you're working with a retail financial advisor who works with individual investors who are buying mutual funds and ETFs for their retirement, you're probably not going to talk to them about option adjusted spread and spread durations and key rate durations. You're going to talk to them about manager selection. You're going to talk to them about volatility. You're going to talk to them about time value of money. So knowing your audience and understanding who is the consumer of your information allows you to zero in and narrow the kind of set of data that you need to curate. And one point I just wanted to make is that I think you're absolutely correct with respect to there's a couple of characteristics that are sort of table stakes in order to provide any sort of legitimate and credible answer. Number one, data has to be right. And I've been on the receiving end of so many embarrassing moments when I'll have a conversation with a client, and I'm a modeling guy. I did a lot of research. I build indices, I build models, I build credit models, and having a conversation with the portfolio managers, asset managers, pension fund managers who have fiduciary obligation to save money for their investors, firemen, retirement, teachers. And when you walk them through your model, and then they pinpoint a piece of data that's wrong, and the notion is usually, well, if you can get something this obvious right, how can we trust the complexity of your model? Absolutely. So every client conversation invariably comes to a complete halt the moment they speak on the first piece of data that's wrong. So data has to be right. And the definition of right is an ever elusive notion, because what makes something right? And that's really complicated a concept. So there's a lot of conversation in the industry, and there's a lot of conferences where people talk about quality control and quality assurance and data quality. And I keep kind of asking myself, without defining what right really means, how do you know something is wrong? And what is the notion of quality control? I personally define it as eradicating errors that matter. And what matters very much depends on who is your audience. So it comes back to knowing your audience and having outcome-oriented technology, as opposed to let us build it and they'll come.